So I want you to listen to President Biden first, then we're going to go to Rick Grenell right away, our Senior Advisor for National Security and Foreign Policy. But Rick speaks to all of these issues as well. This is how he's tried to couch it. He goes to Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown, and makes this speech.
How do you want to be remembered? At consequential moments in history, they present a choice. Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? This is the moment to decide, to defend our elections, to defend our democracy.
Let me go to Rick Grenell. Rick, to make this issue not just partisan, which it already was, there's no legislative text, so I can't even review it to point out, and I know the problems that would be there with this federal takeover, but it's not even specific yet. And then second, to tell the American people that those of us who don't support this federal takeover are equivalent to Bull Connor out of Alabama or George Wallace, that we're these lifelong racists.
It's pathetic. It's a total distraction. It's the lowest point that Joe Biden has had in his presidency. He is desperate to change the issue. He wants to change the subject because his presidency is literally floundering. You look at every single issue: immigration, the price of gas, the border, Afghanistan, Russia, China, every single issue he is completely failing on. And he's now a puppet of these progressives who just want to say, if you don't want to federalize elections to make sure that people get to vote without an ID, without an identification, if you don't support that, then somehow you're a racist. Look, I am a minority. I am gay. I am somebody who is extremely conservative, and I talk to a whole bunch of minorities every single day in my life. I don't know a single person who feels like an ID is some sort of racist move, or an ID is something that's going to prohibit them from voting. Minorities are not stupid people. They have IDs. You know, I think that the conservatives and the Republicans got to get much more aggressive about this. If you're not for an ID, that means you're trying to cheat. IDs are pretty basic. You have to have them to get Sudafed at Walmart. You have to have them to get on a plane. And so why are we even allowing Joe Biden and some Democrats to pretend like we're racist if we want to require identifications to vote and not send out ballots into the mail to people that don't know they're coming and didn't request the ballot and may not be there to get it?
I mean, we all got these. Any of us that have moved since the last census multiple times, which I have, got at least one. I think I got 2 live ballots of places I didn't live anymore. And this was done under the response of COVID. And now there were also some states that had real ID requirements coming in that waived those because of COVID. So I think they showed that some of these were questionable moves, like the massive mail out of ballots. But because it was tough to go get a new ID because DMVs they did the right thing, right? I mean, they didn't need the federal government coming in and telling them what to do on the ID part. They said we can't implement it yet. We're gonna have to wait to the next election cycle. But Wes, you've got a new piece up at ACLJ.org on it's called "A Government Takeover of Your Right to Vote: What You Need to Know."
Yeah, I mean, I listened to the president's speech yesterday, and it was grandiose nonsense. It was insulting. I'm a native of Georgia. I've read Georgia's law on elections. Apparently, the president has not read it. But here's the thing that disturbs me so much about what he's saying. You know, he did all these drastic comparisons: John Lewis, Bull Connor, Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson Davis. You cannot just disagree with Joe Biden on principle or on the merits of legislation. If you do, you are evil. Dr. Fauci said he was science. Apparently, President Biden thinks he is truth and honor. And if you disagree with him, you are both dishonest and dishonorable. This kind of exaggeration and hyperbole is both disingenuous and it's not helpful. If you dislike proposed legislation that forces states to mail ballots to everyone, and you have to count them 7 days after the election, even if they have no postmark, somehow you're like Jefferson Davis, you're a racist and you're evil. I mean, I don't. He should fire the speechwriter who wrote the speech for him. But what really disturbs me, Rick, is I think the president actually believes this.
Look, I can't imagine that someone actually believes this. You have to be a mental patient and not with it to believe that somehow this is racist. I honestly don't know a single person who doesn't have an ID. And I would even move to say if someone can't afford an ID, then maybe the state or the local government can give them one for free. But
all of these laws have that, Rick. I mean, all these laws have that provision that if for some reason, if you don't drive, if you don't this, you just go, you can get a state ID for free.
But let's also talk about what this really means too. If you have ever lived in an apartment complex or know anyone who lived in an apartment complex, you know that the transitory nature of that building means that on election day, if you send ballots to people who are on the voter list who don't know those ballots are coming, there's going to be a plethora of ballots in the mailroom and going to homes where people once lived and no longer live. It's a recipe for disaster to send ballots in the mail to people who don't know they're coming. And so I don't think it's too much to say, look, we can have extended voting. We can even do mail-in voting, but you have to request the ballot and tell us where you live so that we don't recklessly put ballots out there for people to mishandle. It's almost like the Democrats want the elections to be sloppy and no voter ID because they want to cheat. And this is my problem, is that the Republicans have got to get much more aggressive about saying you're trying to cheat.
Yeah. Rick, I appreciate you being on today. I would say finally to you, we got about 30 seconds here, but it's the idea that this kind of sloppy election, which then if they lose, and we saw this in Georgia at the state level in the last gubernatorial race, if they lose, they'll claim it was a fraudulent, illegal election.
Well, for sure. That's what we've seen with Stacey Abrams. Remember, she's never said that she lost the last election, right? She thinks she's running for re-election this time.
Yeah, I mean, this is very real, folks. It's happening in real time. But the idea that demonizations we talked about with Rick, we've seen it with students, parents are terrorists. You are racist if you don't support a law with no text. So I mean, we can't even analyze what he's talking about, but yet he's comparing all of you who listen who might be opposed to this to George Wallace.